Miranda.
Here.
And Goods. We have a physical quorum.
Thank you very much. We left off on item number 4 regarding parking minimums in downtown. Do we have anyone? There we go. Vic? All right, I think Vic B-Day is trying to connect. All right. There's Carlson. We have Carlson and Vieira here. Well, Carlson virtual, Vieira in person. All right. Vic, are you there? Can you hear me? Can you get your camera on? There we go. All right. You're muted, sir. Still muted. 4.
Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and Council. Vic Bide, Director of the Mobility Department, here to address item 4. I believe we put slides in already. If we could bring up the slides. Item 4 is related to a motion made by Councilman Citro, seconded by Councilman Carlson, regarding parking requirements in downtown and other areas. This item was continued from February 17th and being brought up right now. Now I'll be happy to share my screen if needed as well, if the slides aren't available. All right, can you see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Great. I will
Wait.
start at the
All right, go
beginning.
ahead.
If I can, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Wait,
Here we
just
go.
a moment, sir, just a moment. Yes, Mr.
I'm
Shelley?
sorry, I might have been, I don't know whether I heard this, but I believe Councilman Carlson is back online.
Oh, yes, he's there. No, I announced it,
Oh, you announced it?
Yes, sir. Sorry, Mr. Bide, go ahead.
Forget it, I'm sorry.
Sure thing. Thank you. So again, this presentation is about parking requirements, parking policy, and it's really timely as we grow rapidly. As we're all aware, over the next 20 years, Tampa is going to see an additional 258,000 jobs, of which only 20% will be occupied by Tampanians. So what we do with parking and how we accommodate all of these jobs is going to be critical. So we'll look at what some of the recommendations from the T3 Advisory Committee was. Parking was discussed quite a bit under transportation as well as development. We'll look at current state of some of our policies and what's impacting both land use as well as mobility. Best practices, we'll take a look at that. We'll review what we're considering as part of the downtown parking master plan. We've allocated resources in the FY23 budget to partner with planning on moving that forward. And then finally, what that comprehensive approach would look like. So as you all are aware, as part of the T3 or Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow, which is our strategy, the mayor convened several committees. One of them was the Transportation Committee, which highlighted that as a priority. And there were specific items that came out of it relative to looking at the land development code and land use related to mobility and parking and updating the same, modernizing parking. That was a major theme as well, certainly, and right-sizing parking policies, right-sizing relative to parking facilities, on-street versus off-street. And we went through this a couple of years back, but you really want on-street rates to be a little different than off-street, and you want more people parking off-street, especially if they're going to be there for more than an hour or two. So all of these were considered. As far as parking and land use is concerned, a quick review of a history of on-site parking waivers and how they impact our day-to-day business. As you can see, through the last 3 years, there have been several projects that come in for some sort of approval to provide relief from parking requirements. And many of these are approved as well. That is kind of an indicator that we need to change something about our parking requirements. And we're gonna look at what some of those things are. Others will be included as part of the broader planning effort. So one is on-site parking requirements, and I know that there was a privately initiated amendment that is in the works currently, and this is related to that. So I won't belabor the point other than saying that for similar facilities, we may end up with more parking by policy and by code than we want, and that will have impacts to sustainability and resilience, as you can see in this picture, with lesser pervious surface and more impervious surface, which perpetuates our stormwater concerns as well, given all of it is related. I believe Stephen touched upon this in one of his presentations a couple of weeks back, and this really shows that for the same space occupied for a living, if the design is slightly different, our requirements for parking also change. And we do need to fix some of these issues as well, also related to the privately initiated amendment, so I won't comment further on that. Furthermore, while our base requirements are similar to many other cities of our size, like the city of Orlando, what other cities do well with parking on-site requirements is make exceptions or make it easier for certain types of development. Now, our code also allows for certain types of development in that manner, but not so much on on-site parking requirements. Some examples are affordable housing, where by definition, we may need lesser parking. Proximity to transit, and we're working with HART on transit-oriented development, because for our region, in order to accommodate all of our mobility needs for the city, our primary strategy is going to be transit and walk-bike going forward. It does not come at the cost of car infrastructure necessarily. What we're saying is we're going to have more intensity on the former. On-street parking, certainly, and looking at how we can manage our curbs better, Park One strategies, and we'll touch upon that with the streetcar and how that will play a pretty big role in this parking requirements as well, and then driveways and voluntary parking issues. So a quick example, I guess, of comparing parking and how that could either make a place more or less productive. Productive being defined by access and taxable revenue per acre, both of which are indicators of more activity and more equity as well. So the image on the screen on the top left is from North Boulevard and Platt Street, the northeast corner there. It's a really old building. It has very limited parking somewhere in the back, but it supports many businesses. The small structure supports multiple businesses. It's very pedestrian and transit oriented. There's transit both on Cleveland and Platt, which is the one-way pair out there. There are bike lanes there as well, which we will continue to enhance. And the taxable revenue or taxable value per acre is about $2.5 million. So compare that to, relatively speaking, a less productive, and because of the amount of parking it takes, maybe less sustainable as well. Definitely lesser accessible because it creates a super block. This is an example of a parcel near Dale Mabry in 275. It's a big box store. This is currently overparked, and that's not unusual, meaning property owners may elect to or may want to have more parking spaces than the code requires. That, of course, creates more impervious surfaces, and we do need to examine the policy around that. But taxable value is lesser when this takes up much more space and much more amenities, energy, and all of that. So that's something to consider. That is what we would look at as well when we look at it comprehensively. How can we create more productive spaces that are more accessible while keeping the tenets of economic development and the thriving economy that we're fortunate to have going? So some trends in parking management, certainly we've touched upon this: electrification, automation. One thing to consider with electrification, automation, the complete acronym is ACES or CASE, which basically means automation, connected, electric, and shared. And there's a lot of investment in the first three: automation, connectivity, and electric. And we have projects in each of these areas. The last bit that addresses congestion as we grow, shared, has still not completely come to fruition. There are still limited options, and hence our focus on lower cost but transit and walk-by type networks. Curb management, as I mentioned, is a major trend, and you'll see us doing the same. You'll see more and more on-street spaces being used differently in time and space. So they may be used for activation, like through the pandemic we did parklet programs. You'll see them used for staging in certain cases as on-street parking spaces as well, and also flex spaces where we could, mix different uses for these spaces. And you'll see those in downtown Tampa over the next year or so, especially around the Water Street area. Mobility hubs, the Intermodal Center study that FDOT is working on is an example of this, but there are other concepts as well that aggregate different modes of travel physically and virtually. We're working on mobility as a service that aggregates these modes onto a single platform, so it's easy to plan, pay, and ride, basically, which also gets us to frictionless access to some of the parking facilities and integration. Parking is one component of the overall mobility system, of course. And so that's where we draw rational or natural connections between the different areas, especially when we look at curb management, demand management, those type of things. And of course, we keep an eye continuously on more disruptive trends like servitization, meaning at some point with autonomous vehicles, there really isn't, it's not, it's further out, certainly. But at some point, we may go from a vehicle ownership model to a more service-oriented model. We see this with first mile, last mile, bike share scooters already. We may start seeing this as for hire services, and their format kind of changes into our daily lives. This is by no means a definite, but it's something we're monitoring. But here's the typical conundrum when we look at housing attainability and affordability, attainability for that median wage, also known as workforce housing, or transit and walk bike to promote economic development in thriving communities. They all kind of come to a stop when you consider parking and how much space we dedicate to parking in our places, and how that impacts people's choices of how they travel around the city. So that is where parking fits. It fits in the broader conversation of our economic development, of our housing, and our transit considerations. And that's why we're working with our planning team, and that's why we're working with Nicole's group to really look at our jobs and urban core and understand what sort of density, what sort of transportation system, and hence what sort of policies we need to effect in combination or in conjunction with the Planning Commission and others to really bring this all together. So now let's look at the streetcar and how that plays a role. And I know this is a single mode, but the critical part about the streetcar is it is extremely popular. Right now, we're looking at about 80,000 rides a month. That is more than Sunrail, which is a 62-mile system. The other thing that the streetcar line does is it aggregates different parking venues. While this may have been a consideration from just special events and those type of things in the past, today with the growth that we're seeing both in residents and the number of jobs in our downtown area, and not just downtown. I mean, if you look at this picture, we're talking about Ybor, where projects like Gasworks are planned, or even Tampa Heights, which is really the gateway now to a lot of our streetcar suburbs north of the interstate. A streetcar system, especially an expanded streetcar system, will be able to aggregate all of our parking resources and allow for parking requirements to change, which opens the door for a different type of mobility system. So this is really critical, and I hope we all support the streetcar extension for that, because this is just one of the reasons we need to support that. Another reason is most of our transit facilities permanate at job centers. And so what we do from a mobility policy standpoint, a land use policy standpoint in our job centers, sends the signal to travelers on what choice they make. And the most sustainable way to grow forward out of all of this is going to be a combination in all of the above approach, like we mentioned. So some of the things that we would look to do in terms of parking requirements broadly would be to unbundle parking from development and encourage transit and housing being bundled together. So transit-oriented development, housing and transit together towards this vision. This will be with a range of other complementary measures as well: stormwater manuals, parking codes, the transportation technical manual, housing policies, zoning. All of these would be considered at the same time. So these are some of the policies that we would look at. Certainly Vision Zero fits very well into it because it accommodates the biped access. It accommodates things like aging in place. It accommodates things like walkability to schools and better property values as well. Sustainability, TOD. And then creative uses like the picture on the right where in Evanston, one of the parking spaces can convert, or one of the parking garages has a space that converts into classrooms for multiple uses. This is just a thought. So the downtown master plan would consider all of the elements that we discussed, including existing and future extended transit systems, our bus transit system, and land use. And I believe the downtown partnership has a privately initiated text amendment that was scheduled for February 24th at the council workshop, but that was continued as well. I'm not sure exactly when it is continued to, but that policy that is being initiated by downtown partnership does complement this overall vision. And this overall vision isn't just good for our city. I'd like to emphasize that by reducing vehicular congestion within the city of Tampa, where we will continue to be the job center for a 5-county region, but certainly South County, Pasco County, and Pinellas County. By reducing our peak congestion, we're reducing their peak congestion as well, irrespective of mode choice on their part. So this is a very complementary policy, even if we have slightly different priorities, either across the bay or within our county itself. Some other elements of the master plan would be to look at parking operations, how these policies then complement each other. So for example, starting FY23, we're proposing that one part of parking revenues fund streetcar operations, because there's a rational nexus. The streetcar aggregates different parking spaces, allows for the dynamism within our urban core without the need for additional garages and lots. The next aspect of this will also be to kind of look at private parking spaces, and how can we leverage those along with public parking spaces to get the most out of our system without having to build more. We touched upon the text amendment in terms of our citywide parking plan. As I mentioned, in FY23, we've allocated additional revenues towards the parking plan. So now we'll have a total of $350,000. And as with everything else that we plan on, we start by listening. So we'll listen to different communities, understand their needs. We will synthesize what we've already learned through moves and other efforts, finalize the scope. We've already identified the funding, and we're at the process of, again, how do we move forward with this? So that's the gist of my presentation. I'd just like to recap with some of the recommendations and the status on the same. Strategic vision for urban parking management, that's our parking master plan. Best practices in parking, we've already done some with the rates and the tech upgrades and all of that, and curb management as well. Introducing bike parking in every single city garage in the downtown and Ybor as well. And mobility as a service, which will be kicking off in a few months. And we'd be happy to present the same to council. And then finally, parking requirements, which is the purpose of this presentation and how it all fits together. So certainly the downtown partnership is starting this process, but we will look at the entire city and right-size the policy for each neighborhood. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Vic. We're really glad that we have you here with us. That was a very robust presentation. I mean, you really cover all the bases, and I appreciate all your hard work and your team. I know this item was brought forth by Councilmember Citro. Do you have anything, sir?
Oh, as always, praise my friend Vic Bide for being the transportation guru in the city of Tampa. Vic, I brought this up because we now have the future plan for the streetcar extension. And if we are going to have more affordable housing, more workforce housing, developers are looking at not having to put in so many parking spaces so that the clientele that either rents an apartment or buys a condo will be more prone to use that streetcar in our development. So thank you for adding some of the statements that you put in. And this is something I would like to see 2 or 3 blocks either side of the streetcar happen. I look at our parking downtown in 3 different ways. Commuter parking, which is people that come into downtown to do some events, whether it be at our convention center, Amalie Arena, the Straz or something. Residential parking, and business office parking. The glue, in my opinion, we have plenty enough parking spaces in Tampa, but everybody looks for that prime parking space right in front of the building where they want to go. The glue that's going to help the downtown is a downtowner. And we really have to look long and hard with HART, our CRAs, and the city of Tampa to find out funding for that downtowner. Not a point A to point B downtown, but a circular where somebody always has to walk 2 blocks to catch it, and then they can go to where they really want to from a parking space that is 6 or 7 blocks away. So, Vic, I'm keeping all of these in mind. I hope you keep all of these in mind. The next time we hear, maybe we can have some solid plans on our parking. Thank you for looking at other parts of the areas, but my main concern was the downtown. And I would also like to publicly thank Ms. Karen Kress, who I've also worked with on livable roadways. The Downtown Partnership has come up with a really good report, and I'm looking forward to that being presented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vic, along those same lines and what Councilman Citro was talking about, I always look at a plan, and then I look at a plan, what if? What if it doesn't work? And I don't know if this plan comes to that, but when you look at revenues, we haven't discussed anything about revenues. The revenues in parking have been, to my opinion, we made some in the past. We've given a lot of things away. We gave a parking garage because we sold it some years back, And even before that, there was something that has to do with the parking from Kennedy South. Is that still gonna be in effect?
So some of those agreements from the past are in effect, and the most critical ones will come up for consideration in 2027. Others a little bit later. But the key part, and I'm glad you mentioned that, is right pricing and getting the policy right on parking is really critical to this. And we will certainly keep that in mind when it comes up. Another thing I'd like to mention on that, to just reassure the community, is the circumstances under which past decisions might have been made were for a downtown and a city that we are not today. We are sought after by the world. People are moving here, people are investing here, and so we don't have the problems that we had in the past. I would say we have good problems today. So the outlook moving forward is actually positive.
Yeah, but I'm concerned about the flow of income to the parking division. I don't see anything with that. And I know this is a plan, not a recommendation of any sort regarding monies. But I would like to see your department or the planning department and the parking come up with their plan to see what the parking is gonna be. If, parking is expensive here, when you look at the overall income, and I've been to cities where parking is like $8 an hour. And I don't want to see that here. So I know there's, in 2027, a lot of things come to mind. The CIT tax is gone. Maybe the event that I just talked about is gone. And I don't know what's going to happen. But if we're not going to take over our own parking streets, then the plan may have a big hole in it. Because we don't control those streets, we don't control much. But thank you very much. It's a pretty solid report. Appreciate it.
Councilman.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Renner, I knew my voice a little bad the last 2 days. Mr. Renner hit on key points, revenue. But I look at when we talk about ridership. We don't have ridership now on our Heartline buses now, Mr. Renner. Let's be honest. I mean, the South is still the South. We're not the North yet. We want to get there, and we need to get there. But the offered transportation money didn't come. We need money. We need money to buy these rails, because Amazon and all these companies are way out in Riverview, Apollo Beach, Waimama. How do people on the east side of town or the west side of town get there? Because if you got to be to work at 5 o'clock, tell me what bus is running. You know what I know? They may be running, but they ain't running way out there. So when we look at a plan, I got to look at the whole picture of the plan, because I have to look at my ridership and keeping it sustainable to work and operate. I'm hoping you can bring those numbers back to give some kind of idea. I just had a meeting with Chief Bennett last week, and I talked about transportation. We are still the South, and to be able to move this city and this county, we have got to get some type of fast mobility type transportation to get people to point A and point B. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I rode a bus, because it takes me 3 to 4 hours to get to where I got to go. The South is still a car-driven place. We haven't got, I tell you, when I've been to New York one time, Mr. Miranda, and I took a whole bunch of kids. I love kids. Took a whole bunch of ball players to New York. I met up with my Central Florida ball clubs, and we went to New York and went to New Jersey. The kids were astounded because we could get on this boat, could take us to one place, the other place in record time. We could get around the city. We could go to that subway thing and we can get on. I'm in little Italy, little Chinatown. I was amazed on how it works. Maybe one day we can get there, but I tell you, we got to have some revenue to get there. So it's a great plan with a great idea. I'm just worrying about revenue and really is it gonna really make the impact we need to make to get things moving? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Vic?
Wait, Councilman
I'm sorry.
Carlson and then Councilman Citro.
Yeah, thank you, just to follow on that a bit. I don't think it's a north-south issue. It's and you kind of said this, it's the stage of development of cities. The older cities were built around horse trails and cattle trails and pre-cars. And then the cities, especially in Florida, were built mostly after World War II, and they were built around suburban car-centric environments. And we don't have the density that a lot of other cities have. But I've seen situations like this where cities develop, all over Asia, new cities have grown out of nothing. Swampland and others, Singapore even created islands. And the model that Singapore, and sorry to mention Singapore all the time, but I know a lot about it. When I first went there in 1989, they had what I now call neighborhood commercial districts. And we've experimented with those in McDill area and also in West Tampa, but I think we need to continue that throughout the city. What it was is you had a hub of commercial activity, entertainment activity, and then around that, and in that commercial hub was also a bus station, and then around that was housing, and then around that was offices and factories. And when they finally built the subway and the light rail, all it did is it connected the nodes that they had already developed through planning. And so I think that the key of this is planning. We've got Stephen Benson now, who I think is brilliant and visionary like you are, Mr. BJ. And I think we need to look at it from a planning point of view. We need to go back to the neighborhood commercial district area. And as we're looking at reducing parking requirements, we would do it in the denser areas that might be the core nodes of these neighborhood commercial districts, or in the downtown areas, or Ybor, or some of the denser areas. But then as we go out, Mr. BJ, you also know that you and I've gotten some emails the last few days. The area around Deacle in South Tampa, you and I have been working on that 3 years, and we still haven't figured out the solution. Now with Uber Eats and these other services, restaurants don't just have the capacity of people parking at the restaurants, but now they have lots of people temporarily parking at restaurants and other things. I think we need to figure out the temporary parking for food establishments in particular, but maybe others that will have deliveries. Because what's happening is that temporary delivery cars and trucks are parking in front of fire hydrants, they're parking in front of driveways, and they're really disrupting the single family neighborhood housing areas. And so I would just ask, first of all, that we start with planning, the comprehensive planning really, which is planning how the space works and how people and businesses will interact with the space. And then we plan mobility and traffic around that, and then we plan the parking around it. But that as long as we, in our plan, have single family housing, we need to make sure that we protect the street parking and other parking in those areas so that it's not congested with all these other kind of new issues that have popped up, because it really directly affects the quality of life of the people living there. Thank you.
Great point, Councilman Carlson, and also Councilman Goods. The gist, as Councilman Carlson mentioned, is land use. And it's the land use that kind of reflects what the transportation system looks like. And that's where we would work, with the Planning Commission, with Stephen, with Nicole's team on densification and then fostering the right type of transportation system. But in many ways, again, irrespective of geography, we're really looking to the future by learning from our past. Pre-1960s, we had a different type of transportation system, which is neighborhood-centric, where services were closer to where you lived, where you didn't have to drive 7 miles to get to a big box store, where you could walk several blocks to transit and get to where you needed to get to. So that would be what we would try to accomplish in, say, our streetcar suburbs around the urban core. There may be a different treatment around our coastal high hazards. We're studying that area as well, and we may need to de-intensify out there and intensify where the density needs to be. So all of these would be considered, and certainly we would need to look at, and the point is well taken, a short-term strategy to address some of the concerns that we have with current land use as we transition over the next 20 years.
Can I-
So
Could I just add real fast, Mr. Chair? I think we should be careful, and this is a philosophical conversation for another day, but when we mention land use or we mention the comprehensive plan, and you didn't mention the latter, but when we mention the two of them, I think the development community looks at those as obstacles to development. And the neighborhoods look at them as ways to protect what's happening in the neighborhood. And so really they're built up around how development happens and what uses there are, what the value is of land. And what I'm talking about, and I know this is what you do because you do this every day, but what I'm talking about is a real plan or vision. And it's a thing that you do with complete streets. Like how do we, instead of thinking it from a land use issue point of view, how do we do a real plan that talks about how people will interact with the space and how businesses interact with the space? And what are the uses of the space? It's not how we allocate or create value for development. It's about how people will use it. And so I don't know if the word planning is the right nomenclature for it. I know neighbor commercial district plans is one aspect of it, but I think we need to think carefully about the words that we use, because it's not just a land use issue as is traditionally used. It's much more about more comprehensive planning.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda, then Councilman Cedar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for my second bite at the apple. I agree with the statements that Mr. Vijay made, and according to that, there was bus 3 and 4 that would take us from downtown to Ybor City and to the housing projects. And I never forget, it was mid-70s, about 76, 77, when I'm walking down the bottom of the stairwell, and Harry Orr, who was the director of what? The City of Tampa transit system. City of Tampa had their own buses. Those are the buses that we carry. So a lot of people don't know this. I see some heads are shaking and moving around. And I never forget what Harry Orr told me. He said, the day you take $1 federal dollar for the bus system, you are not going to have a system. Because you got to go from here to Waimama to leave one person off, and it becomes monetarily impossible to survive. And the bus system was right here. The buses were stored right here off of Cleveland, about halfway between here and Howard Avenue on the south side. That's where the buses were stored at night. We had a bus system that worked. It wasn't perfect, but it's much used than it is today for many reasons. And you touched on some of them. You lived and worked in the same area. You played in the same playgrounds where you lived and worked. You didn't have to go miles and miles and miles to find friends. You had plenty of friends around you. We had one thing that we don't have now. We had more land than people. Now you got more people than land. That's why things cost so much. It's one of the reasons. So all those things I was able to live through and understand, and you have to, like you said, you have to go back and look at how you come to today and what you're going to do with what you have. So going back to that theory that if you had your own bus system, and I'm not saying we should, I'm saying that we should improve what we have interlocal and find out where the transit people travel, have more smaller buses, more rapid buses, more delivery. You don't need a 80, 60 passenger bus when you only have 10 people in it. And if you don't believe me, just take a look. When you're driving around, you see a bus stop, count the heads inside the bus. And I'm not a gambler, but I'm willing to gamble. You don't find 20 people in a bus during rush hour. Where before you had people standing up when they had the little hook that you had to hold on to, the bus was completely full. And the reason is people got better jobs, they got better education, and they moved from Ybor City, from West Tampa, from East Tampa. Everywhere they moved to, you had to expand the bus system. And what happened is, all of a sudden, you're not working and living where you work. You had to travel 15, 20 miles, 10 miles, 5 miles, and that's what you have today. You have an abundance of car, an abundance of people with the same road work that we had many, many years ago. And when you look at the transportation of the expressway, they saw problems by adding a lane. My theory is different. Don't add a lane and make them ride rail or something that rides buses by a lot of people. Because if you keep adding lanes, all you're doing is going back to the same situation you had 2 or 3 years earlier. You built another lane, Yeah, it worked for a couple of years, and after that, what? You got the same bumper-to-bumper problem that you had before. And these are the things that we have to address and look at and say, listen, we're gonna bite the bullet, and we're gonna say, listen, we're gonna build something, and let's use it. The streetcar is certainly gonna improve, it's certainly gonna get better, but it's not gonna solve all the problems. It's not large enough, it's not big enough. The streetcar, when I was a young guy here in Tampa, it went about 50-some miles in the city, from Ybor City to Ballast Point to Hyde Park to West Tampa to Ybor City to Tampa Heights, close to everywhere you could ride a bus in the city. And in the 50s, mid-50s, or close to the 60s, they took the streetcars out. In the mid-60s, the final nail was put in when they took the rail out. Now you had nothing. So it wasn't until back, I think the first streetcar system cost about 11 million. Now it costs 11 million to go one block. So these are the things that you have to look at, and things change, but they still remain the same. You have to move people from point A to point B, and now there's much more to do than there was in the 50s and the 60s. Therefore, you have gridlock. Therefore, we can't give away our parking. You can't give our street parking away. It's got to be kept so the people can still harmonize and go somewhere at a much less expense. That's what I'm saying, and I hope you success. Thank you very much, sir.
Councilman Cedro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Vic, again, thank you for your wonderful report. I've heard many things in this discussion, especially about when Tampa had its own bus service. We had to switch that over, and now look at our bus system. I heard another topic about going to another city. I can go to Chicago, land at Midway, cross over Cicero, get on the Orange Line, and I'm downtown in 20 minutes. The city of Tampa is the only major metropolitan of our size that has no rail from its airport to its downtown. The city of Tampa is not responsible for any type of taxing entity to go for transportation. That is Hillsborough County, and that's where our citizens get confused, where they say, what are you doing about our transportation? So, when and if this all for transportation tax comes back on, please, ladies and gentlemen, vote it in. That is going to help pay for our transportation needs. Vic, I would be remiss if I did not say this. Electrical vehicle charging stations, at least in some parking spaces within our downtown area. People come downtown, they stay for an hour, maybe two during business, prime time to charge their cars. It could be 2 bites of the apple, one for parking, one for charging, because nothing is for free. Thank you, Vic, for listening to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. What a great discussion and a great history lesson. I love history, as you all know, but Councilman Miranda, you witnessed it, you lived through it, and I mentioned you the other day, I go, there's 3 people left in Tampa, Dick Greco, Charlie Miranda, and E.J. Salcinas, to talk about how things used to be. And it's important that we know that, and we teach that to the new generations and us here, because it seems that Tampa at one point, let's take Ybor City. Ybor City is the perfect example of live, work, and play historically. You had mutual aid societies, you had jobs, you had the streetcar going down 7th Avenue. It worked, but then Tampa grew and it got big, and the interstate, and they pulled up the streetcar and all these things. And here we are thinking, we want to go back to how things were, because it was focused on not the automobile, but the pedestrian. And I think things come full circle. And a century later, we're looking at how do we get back to that, and now to accommodate a much larger city. So wonderful presentation and discussion. I really enjoyed it, and we thank you. If there's no other questions, no?
No, just if I may, and your mutual aid society became what? Medicare.
Yep.
And Bolita became what? The lottery. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
All right. Thank you, sir. Next item we have is, we have a memo here from CFO Dennis Rojero on item number 6. I don't know if he had a presentation. Gene Duncan is also named here. I don't know if there was anything here, if this was just to be received and filed. There he is. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Council. Dennis Rajero, Chief Financial Officer. We provided that staff report. I'm here if you'd like me to highlight portions of it or if you have any questions, but that is the extent of our submission.
Councilman Citro, this was your item. Would you like any further discussion?
Well, yes, I again, getting back on the subject that we had earlier, transportation is a must, it's a necessity. Sidewalks is another necessity for funding. Any way we can get anything for the aforementioned things such as sidewalks, anything for affordable housing, what are you saying is the best use of money for, best way we can use this money?
Thank you, sir. Well, and I'll start with just a few highlights and then get down into the detail you just asked for. Again, this is a little over $1 trillion over the next 5 years. About half of that is brand new federal funding. So it's our intention to go for every dime we can get, as long as it's within our strategic goals, as long as it is communicated and coordinated with our regional partners, you know, the MPO, HARP, Hillsborough County Government, for instance. As you've seen from the staff report, it's very, very transportation heavy, focused on safety, bridges, where we can fit this funding and the required match funding to our priorities, repaving, sidewalks, et cetera. That's exactly what we're going to do. As part of the staff report, you see nearly 24 potential opportunities scattered throughout the departments. Again, very transportation heavy. So that will be, most of our effort is seeking the funding to align with what we need, some of which you just pointed out.
How much of this can we contribute with transportation, especially if we're talking light rail or rubber-wheeled designated buses? It's usually funding 50% feds, 25% state, 25% local, which basically is Hillsborough County. How much of this money can we put into that 25% for Hillsborough County to get some transportation needs completed or started?
A few things need to happen before I can answer that definitively. Again, next month, we're going to have a meeting with the highest levels of the federal government about this funding. As I said, we're also going to coordinate, speaking of the county, we're going to coordinate, communicate with them. As you'll see in the staff report, the match requirements are anticipated to be 20% to 80%. So they could potentially be significant. It's prudent for us right now, and that's what we're doing, to try to identify every single match revenue opportunity we have. Because if you have a project, it's an important project, and you need to provide 80% of the match, well, that's 4/5 of the project. Not to downplay the 20% they give us, because 20% is 20%. So as we work that out, the match requirements will become clear. The funding sources that will tag for those match requirements will also become clear.
Okay, let's go on to the next. Sidewalks and roads. City of Tampa only has 20% of the roads within our city limits. How much of this, if we get funding, can go to roads such as our state roads or county roads, such as Columbus Drive, such as Bayshore Boulevard, such as 40th Street? How much of this funding can we go to repave those roads, fix those roads, or better our sidewalks?
From my perspective, sir, it's too soon to tell. I would defer to mobility and transportation. They may have more detail, but again, that is part of what I see becoming clearer and clearer as we meet with the federal government and as we talk to our partners.
Vic, I see you there, and I'll come to you in a second. And last but definitely not least, can we use any of these funds for affordable housing, either building or purchasing land for affordable housing?
Now, when I look through the paperwork for this, I see very transportation heavy, as I said, and serving disadvantaged communities. I haven't seen opportunities that strike me for affordable housing. Now, having said that, I can't say with further discussion and a meeting of the minds, we might not be able to find some way, either directly or indirectly, to contribute to that effort.
I thank you very much for your input on this. Mr. Chairman, I go to Vic and, excuse me, Mr. Bidet. Mr. Bidet, You heard the questions that I posed about repaving roads, transportation, and sidewalks. Are we able to use these funds for those things?
So that's a great question, multi-part answer. So there's one entire program of the various funding opportunities being available that is targeted towards cities to fill this particular need, which is condition of roadways. Not having seen the notice of funding opportunity because it's not been released yet, we don't know what those conditions are or what the pathway for the funds are. Usually federal funds flow through formula programs that go through the state, requested by the MPO and to us. That would be the status of a majority of the funding opportunities, which is why the surtax is important so that we can leverage some local funding to be competitive for federal funds. There is indication that there will be some direct funds available as well. And we're tracking these meetings along with Revenue and Finance on a weekly basis with USDOT, but not having seen those notice of funding opportunities, we don't know for certain. What we do know is there will be plenty of programs that map a lot of our strategic needs, including how do we connect mobility and affordable housing, and how do we enhance one with the use of the other. The details, of course, we'll continue to share as they become available.
Ms. Bide, I'm sure I can count on you to grab hold of that money with both hands when it becomes available. Now, my last statement, which I should have brought up at the last, and I'll end there, Mr. Chair. Brightline's coming. We know that. Are we ready and set and able to use any of these type of funds to help with a multimodal hub at the terminal of Brightline so that when people come into this city with maybe 2 kids in tow from Disney World and luggage, they don't have to jump on scooters and rent bikes, that they can actually get to other venues, such as the airport, such as Amalie Arena, such as our aquarium, such as our convention center, or to the airport. Can we use these funds for that?
So I'm not aware of a program where these funds can be used directly for an intermodal center or those type of multimodal facilities. However, there will be funding that can complement any kind of current effort. So be it Brightline coming in and they're working directly with the state and the federal government, or be it local initiatives. So FDOT has an intermodal center study that has intermodal center locations identified in very key locations, like close to the airport, close to downtown. Our goal would be to leverage different programs to our benefit and match them and fill the gaps where needed, be that expertise or funding. But it will require for us to have our strategy very clear in our mind as we look at these opportunities, and we're committed to that.
Mr. Bide, thanks. We have to start looking regionally at our transportation needs. Hopefully we can look at the rest of the area around Tampa Bay and say, we have funds, why don't you match us, and let's get this off the ground. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Goods? No? Anybody else?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just quick, Vic, a few years ago, Senator Brandis and others thought that autonomous vehicles would be very common right now, and we're still kind of in the experimental stage. One of the arguments that was made about, Councilmember Citro mentioned downtown the airport, one of the arguments that was made a couple years ago was that with autonomous vehicles, we could dramatically cut the price and experiment with different routes by running from downtown to Ybor, like, run up and across Cypress. And if I remember correctly, 50 or 60% of the cost of buses is people. And so if we could run a line with autonomous vehicles, we could run them more frequently, have greater headways, and make it more reliable. And then if it worked, then we could put rail there and have a dedicated line eventually if we wanted to. But where do we stand on that? Is there any is having an autonomous vehicle route from downtown to the airport, is that even possible?
So without it being on its own facility with very few interruptions, today that is not as feasible. Mainly because if it were feasible, it would be happening. However, automation is really a spectrum and will remain a spectrum for some time. It's not like a robot will completely take over vehicles and, you know, we're there. Now that day may come, but where our opportunity lies with today's strategy and how we gradually move and accept autonomy as it comes in, are projects like bus rapid transit, which begin with their own dedicated guideway or their own dedicated lanes. And so you will see more and more opportunities in spaces that are more controlled for automation. The same thing with interstate systems where there's nobody else, it's limited access other than vehicles. So that's where we will see that spectrum, if you will. Another way the spectrum of automation is going to manifest itself is with introduction of incremental features. So several years back, you know, backup cameras were a luxury. Today they're standard. The same thing with seatbelts, power steering, you name it, different safety features. So as these vehicles, irrespective of form factor, get more and more connected with each other, and they get more and more feature rich, we'll move that needle on automation forward. But it doesn't appear like that is something that's imminent, and that's something we should be planning in our short-term plans for now. Long-term, certainly we should experiment with pilots, which we are doing on either side of the bay.
One final quick comment, just a comment, not a question, but as I understand it, Brightline, because coming across I-4, is going to land just off I-4 near Ebor. And some of the plans for light rail in the past, going east and west, were to go along 275. And as you know, we wouldn't get any benefit from transit-oriented development then, and it wouldn't tie into the kind of people planning and nodes that neighborhood nodes that we talked about before. So I hope, as you and Stephen Benson and others are doing planning with DOT and the other big players, that we can design it not by expediency, but by what makes sense for the people of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate it very much. Items number 7 and 8, I believe, can go together. They're both South of Gandy community concerns, part 1, and then the second part is really the 14 items of concerns that were submitted by the South of Gandy group. I don't know who will be presenting items 7 and 8.
Afternoon, Chair Vic Bide, Director of Mobility Department. I can address item 7.
Okay.
We did submit a staff report that basically outlines the question about the transportation concurrency exception areas, or TCEAs. TCEAs were created to foster more infill development in areas back then like Ybor City and downtown, where a lot of development had moved away from, and developers preferred a different type of development, either sprawl and subdivisions, or areas where there wasn't a mature transportation grid or system because costs were lesser. And so that's why they were introduced. Getting rid of the TCEAs is one part of a broader planning discussion that we're having along with Nicole's team. Basically, it will require looking at what type of development and what type of intensity we want in different areas, and then right-sizing the solution for the same. A lot of that is part of the memo that was submitted. If there are any questions related to that, I'll be happy to address them.
Councilman Carlson, I think this was your item. Do you have any questions, sir?
No, the reports speak for themselves, but Vic, I think if you and I maybe could go meet with the South of Gandy folks and just go through this. I know you've spoken to them directly, but maybe we could go speak to them in detail about all this and see what else we could bring back.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sounds- Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Next item is item number 8. Mr. Bede, were you going to speak on that, or Mr. Benson?
I cannot speak to item
Okay.
8.
No, we have
I'm not
Mr. Benson here. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Stephen Benson, Director of City Planning. The update for this item is included in the memo in your packet. I just wanted to kind of close it out to say that of all the 14 items, every one of them is either under review or in process. 7 have already been completed, and then the remaining that have yet to be really taken up, it's because those are going to be addressed as part of the Coastal Area Action Plan contract and community plan that we will be doing for the South of Gandy neighborhoods. And we expect that contract to be executed hopefully by the end of next week and move forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, 9, 10, and 11 are done. Item number 12, a motion by Councilmember Carlson regarding an update on the Lamb Canal project. There is a memo from Vic Bede to be received and filed. Not sure if he had anything to add to that, or Councilman Carlson, are you happy with the staff report that was submitted?
I don't have anything else to ask.
No? All right, so if there's nothing else, would you like to move on?
Yes.
Okay, can we get a motion then to receive and file that
So
staff
moved.
report? Motion from Councilman Miranda, second from Councilman Goods, all in favor?
All right.
Thank you very much. We go to the last 4 items of the agenda. Item number 13 was my motion. There is a memo from Osea Wynn. This is regarding the enforcement and increase of littering fines. It was a written report. I do not need her present, so I'll just look that over and then I'll respond to my constituents that had asked about this. May I have a motion to receive and file item 13? Motion from Councilman Miranda, second from Councilman Goods, all in favor? Aye. All right, next up, Vic Bede as well. This is a motion by Councilmember Carlson regarding a signalized light at the intersection of Grand Hampton Drive and County Line Road, or at East County Line Road and Dunham Station.
That was
Oh,
my
I'm sorry. The motion to reschedule was Carlson.
And,
Yes, sir.
And if I may, no, and I don't need, and Vic, I don't need anything, unless if you have anything other than the report. It would appear that we can have this back in 90 days. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to have this returned to us at the next available date after 90 days. Mr. Bede, does that sound good, sir?
Yes, sir, that sounds good. We should be done with our analysis and have some findings.
Let me get you a date. There's,
How about the first after 4th of July? Does that sound good?
okay, because there's June 16th. If not, we can go to July.
That wouldn't be 90 days, would it? April, May, June? So they need 90 days.
All right, let's
So-
do July 14th.
Sounds good to me.
All right, we have a motion to, continue that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, until July 14th under staff reports from Councilman Vieira. Do we have a second? Second from
Second.
Councilman Goods, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Item number 15, we have a PowerPoint presentation.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, go ahead.
Valerie Horton Rakes, Risk Manager for the City of Tampa. I have submitted a memo along with information regarding the public officials insurance that the City of Tampa carries, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have regarding same.
Do we have any questions at this time? All right, is there a PowerPoint presentation as well?
There should be a PowerPoint. If we could put it up on the screen, I'll be happy to go through it with you.
If we can bring up the PowerPoint for item 15. No PowerPoint? No?
You
Uh-oh.
don't have it? Okay. Well,
Can we continue this to the
I
next
do
regular
have-
meeting?
well-
Or you do?
oh, it was back up. Oh, sorry. Well, I'll be happy to go through it. If that's okay with you, I can give you the information that's in it.
Is that all right with council? Yeah, all right,
Okay.
go ahead.
Great. We do carry coverage. It's called Public Officials and Employment Practice Liability. The City of Tampa has carried that coverage for more than 12 years. Oh, perfect. say maybe that'll help. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. We carry that $2 million per occurrence coverage. We have an SIR, which is self-insured retention of $500,000. Everyone who works for the city of Tampa is covered by this policy. City council members are covered by this policy. Volunteers are covered by this policy. Authorized volunteers. And boards, commissions, et cetera, who operate under the umbrella of the city of Tampa are also covered by this policy. The policy covers wrongful acts, and there is a definition for that, and I will not read it, but these acts are defined inside of the policy itself. We have to give prompt notification to the carrier in the event that claims are filed or investigations occur. And what I will share with you on that, that is an administrative decision that occurs among and across departments. And your particular question was about D&O coverage. D&O coverage is for for-profit, nonprofit businesses, and it is designed to protect them against filings around issues with their directors and officers. And that's just really a very general explanation of the coverage. Up to this point, we have never used the policy. We have never had to file a claim.
Okay, just so I'm clear, it says limit 2 million per occurrence,
Yes, it
named
is.
insured city of Tampa. So if the city is sued on whatever, you know, falls within those guidelines.
Yes.
It limits it to $2 million.
Yes, it
So we
does.
couldn't get hit with a judgment of $100 million or $10 million or, we're capped at that.
We are
$2 million.
capped,
Okay.
yes.
And then self-insured retention per occurrence, 500,000 is this, that we are, you know, I see authorized volunteers, elected or appointed officials are covered up to $500,000.
That $500,000 in layman's terms, the SIR, it's like a deductible. The city of Tampa is responsible for paying that first $500,000.
Okay.
So if something occurs and there is a settlement, a judgment, et cetera, the city would have to write a check for that before the insurance company would step
Capped
in.
at 500,000. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else?
That is it, unless there are other questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, without mentioning any particular cases, I maybe like my colleagues, I have concerns about the self-insurance on the first 500. I wish we could find. I think we need to have an objective third-party insurance for everybody, ideally, but in particular for city council. I guess you sent us a copy of the policy because I haven't read it yet. But so for the first 500, does the same policy apply as applies for 500,000 plus?
You broke up a little bit, sir. I didn't hear the complete question.
Sorry. So did you send the policy to us? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So the policy for 500,000 plus, did you send us a copy of the coverages for the policy?
Yes, that was provided.
Okay. And so for claims that are 500,000 less, does the same policy terms apply?
Correct.
Would the city, in determining whether to cover something, would the city staff follow the same guidelines of that policy?
You are asking, based upon the terms of the policy, if there is a cost of $500,000 or less, would the city follow the wording of the policy? The $500,000 SIR is self-insurance, and so the city of Tampa has to make a determination on how that will be done. So that first $500,000, the city of Tampa as a body and an operational body will take a look at what's happening and make a decision based upon the facts and circumstances of that particular filing or claim.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, but I would like to make a motion. I can do it now or later, but for either city council members or everyone to have a more objective policy for 500,000 less, and maybe it would have a $5,000 or $10,000 minimum on it. But the problem, as we've observed, is that the public and maybe some of us feel that the decision about whether to cover something or not is either arbitrary or political. and we need to provide objectivity. If someone has the city self-insures health insurance, but then outsources the administration of it, and if somebody needed a lung transplant, I'm making that up, it's some very expensive health thing, that would be covered under the terms of the agreement that was worked out with the provider, even though the city is self-insuring it. But in this case, if there's no specific guidelines, if we're not following the guidelines of 500,000 plus, then it looks like it's arbitrary or political as to whether somebody gets reimbursed or protected. And how do we protect council and other staff of the city and put objectivity back into it?
I am not sure if that was a question for me. I thought you were asking for a motion. I'm sorry, would you please clarify?
Yeah, I may ask for a motion, but.
Okay, I'm sorry. And your question.
The question is, how do we, the observation by the public and maybe some of us is that the decision on whether to cover is not arbitrary, is not objective for up to the first 500,000, like everything after that might be. And I used healthcare as an analogy that the city administration would not get together to discuss whether somebody would get a lung transplant or not. That's outlined in the guidelines of the coverage policy. But in this case, if there's no objectivity in it, then people think that it's arbitrary or political. So how do we make it objective and take the arbitrariness of politics out of it?
Well, first, I would venture to argue that it is objective, but going on your premise, sir, I think what we would need to do is to make sure that we are very transparent as we make decisions about information that is submitted to us. I would also like to help you to understand, and others, that every fact situation is different. There's a clause in our policy that says, as long as the individual is operating inside of their course and scope of their employment or duties, then that is something that has to be looked at very carefully.
Yeah, and it seems that in practice that decision also could be arbitrary. Somebody could I could park in my colleague's parking space by accident and then get in trouble because I did that. And it seems like the purpose of this kind of insurance is if you make a mistake that you would be covered, and a mistake kind of by its definition might be something outside or slightly outside the bounds. And if there are no specific guidelines on what that means, then it seems like it's arbitrary or political. So if the chair will allow me, I'll just make a quick motion, and I don't have dates in front of me, sorry, but I would make a motion to ask staff to come back in a month or two to propose some kind of objective policy with objective specified guidelines for coverage between 0 and 500,000.
All right, Councilman Vieira, I see your hand, and then Councilman.
I just, the word objective could mean many things to many people. And when you buy a policy that tells you how you're covered, where you're covered, and what you have to do to have the policy enforced in case something happens. When you buy an automobile policy, you create your own level of what you want. If you want bodily injury, if you want this, you want the other for occurrences, how much total, you want $1 million coverage for the total, you want 100,000 per occupant, or whatever it is. So we're going now into a different area, and I don't especially understand the policy. We are covered, as we all know it now, under the policy. However, if I am told, Charlie Miranda goes out, and I am told by those of authority in the legal department to me, I'm talking about me, listen, here's what you can do and what you can't do. If they ask you for this, you must turn it in, and we will therefore represent you. And I tell them, no, I don't want to do that. Then that policy, even if we had an insurance policy, is not going to cover us, because I did not adhere to the policy coverage that was intended at the time you bought the policy. If I'm driving a car and I have 100,000, 300,000 and liability for each occurrence or total, for occurrence or total of the occurrence, and my policy, and it goes over 300,000, guess what? The driver of that car, me, is responsible for the difference of 300,000 and above for the occurrence. So there's an open area here that I don't quite grasp, and I want to get to the bottom of it, because it's not about me or anyone else, it's about the intent of the policy, and I'm not talking about this council. When you buy a policy, even in a homeowner's policy, it covers you to a certain extent. Wind damage, rain damage, so forth and so on, and it's very, you look at it, it may have coverage, may not have coverage, depending on how it happens. So, you know, I see ads now in the paper and TV all the time about, hi, I want to be your pipe insurance guy. I represent you because I know you got pipes under your house. Let me tell you what happened to me in one of the rental properties that I manage. I was going to rent a property to a person. That person, I said, I need some work done. She sent a friend over, and the first thing the guy tells me, he looks under the sink and he tells me, you know, you can get $12,000 from your insurance policy because you got old pipes. I didn't say a word. The next thing he tells me is, this house is big enough you can divide it in half. And that's where I stopped. You know what I told the guy? Get the hell out of the house. Just like that. So it makes no difference what kind of policy you have. It's the intent of the written and what's in the policy and what you want to pay for, what you don't want to pay for. So what happens here in a policy, it's what tailored for what you want. All insurance policies have different amount of monies that you want. The reason I'm not driving the electric car, because I don't want to pay the insurance for the electric car. I'm driving a hybrid. So I'm saving some money. If gas keeps going up, I'll park this car and drive the electric car. But it is what it is in life, and I can't solve all the problems of society, or society can't solve all my problems. So it is what it is, and I appreciate you bringing it up, and I understand some of what you're saying. I don't understand the objectivity of the policy, because no policy, a policy comes straightforward. It either is or it's not. You have a certain amount of time to report the date of injury, the date of the accident, and those are the things that are just plain written in the policy. That's all I can tell you.
Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. And, you know, this is similar to something that happened last week where I said I need more information on it because there was a premise on the motion that without going down a rabbit hole, so to speak, more information. I have to do my own due diligence on it and whatnot. A couple of other issues is with a self-insured retention, to the extent that folks are talking about, and I don't mean in this motion, just in general, not having a self-insured retention. People do that because they want to have lower premiums, and a lot of cities do that because of saving on costs, et cetera. So, you know, every single policy, and I'm an attorney, I'm a liability attorney, I'm not a coverage attorney, thank God I'm not a coverage attorney, but you know, policies have objective language on what is and isn't covered under the policy. You know, Councilman Carlson brings up some potentially viable points, but you know, for me, I need to, you know, speak to more folks on this, et cetera. Maybe if you want to bring it up in a few weeks after I do my due diligence, because the last few weeks have been very, very busy, it goes without saying. But I seem to remember when I first got on council, a case in which we approved a settlement that I was a little confused by. It was involving Tampa Police Department. I remember the attorney was the wonderful, amazing attorney, Joe Lopez, was a plaintiff's attorney. And we got a release for Tampa Police Department, but not the police officer, because he was found to not be in the course and scope of employment, and therefore the city didn't cover him. Again, how it applies to us, how it applies to this, I just wanted to get more information before I vote on something like this. My opinion. So just my position.
Councilman Carlson, do you just want to hold off for a couple of weeks and bring it up later?
Could we just continue this for a month and then I could make 2 more statements about it before we close?
We
Make a motion to continue for a
a
month.
month from now, let's say May 5th, but before anything, Councilman Good.
Mr. Shelby, where are you at with that situation when we asked you to come back with information? Is it relevant to this?
I was just going to bring that up, Mr. Chairman. I've been actually it's scheduled for next week, and it's interesting that this overlaps and actually travels together. The actual motion was Martin Shelby, council attorney, to provide a report on his advice regarding creating an ordinance to protect elected officials sued under Chapter 119, and I think that this ties very much into this. I've been doing initial research, and I've only actually had a week, and have to be prepared for next week, so frankly, I'm not quite with my due diligence yet either. But specifically, if we are, as we say, if you do have self-insured retention, even in
But
ordinance,
119
we'd have to address that. Because I will tell you,
119 is
counsel,
only a subset of it, I think, too.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir? Carlson?
Sorry, 119 is only a subset of this, too. Could I make two more analogies real fast?
Go ahead. All right. Yeah, wait. Mr. Shelby.
What I found so far, counsel, is, oh, by the way, I did hear from Sarasota. Sarasota doesn't in fact have an ordinance. Sarasota has indemnification in their charter, and there are other places that have it in the charter as well. And some do have ordinances. Hillsborough County does have it with regard to policies. But I'm still in the process of doing it, and I would have to continue looking further. And this is only specific to Chapter 119, and that's rather limited, and I don't believe I found anything yet that just applies singularly to that. It would have to apply
Yeah.
more broadly, I would think.
Councilman Carlson, you had a couple of analogies?
Yeah, I think to Councilmember Miranda's point, I want to make sure that there is the question I had before was, what is the same policy above 500,000 apply to everything below 500,000? The answer was no. And so the question is, why wouldn't it match? And we don't have to answer this today, but we need to have the specific policy. And if I use the healthcare analogy again, let's say I accidentally park in Councilmember Citro's space, and a truck comes up and hits me and I get injured. If the legal department says, well, you parked in the wrong parking space and therefore you broke the rule, and so the health insurance doesn't apply, so we're not going to cover your health insurance while you're in the hospital. That's not an objective system, and it doesn't, or at least the margin of error is so narrow that it doesn't allow for any reasonable person to get covered. And then the second thing is that a healthcare policy, if you need to have surgery, you have a choice of in plan and out of plan, or in network and out of network. So if you decide if you don't like the surgeon that's inside the city's healthcare plan, you can go to your own surgeon, but you would pay, I presume I'm not on the plan, but let's say instead of the city paying 80 or 90%, they only pay 60%. But you have the option to go out of network. So in this case, if one of the covered areas was attorneys, you don't have to use the city's attorney, you go use an outside attorney, but they're only going to pay up to a certain amount per hour or only a certain percentage. But I think we need to have that objectivity in it. So my motion was that we just, with that understanding in mind, if we could just continue this for a month and then have an additional discussion.
Okay, May 5th is just a little over a month where we have a regular session. We want to put under staff reports?
So motion to move to continue to May 5th.
Under staff reports. And Councilman Vieira, I saw your hand up, sir.
And I was just going to say, I'm all for reaching out on this issue. And Mr. Shelby, I'll be following up with you, I guess, within the next week to talk about this and your findings, and I'm sure we'll all be doing it separately and whatnot. I was going to discuss it further, but again, I don't want to belabor the issue. I think.
Would you like to second it?
If I could, and we could
Yeah,
have
let's
an
just all do it one day.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I know, sir, we had a busy week in the last couple of weeks, so,
And another busy week to come.
No, we'll just add it together. We don't have to amend anything else. You just bring everything back on the 5th and gives,
Well, then, what you could do is if you could move that one that's scheduled on next week's agenda
okay.
and move it to May 5th.
So we have a motion from Councilman Carlson, a second from Councilman Vieira? Sure.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a few clarifying points real quick, please?
Yes, sir.
I'm not a risk manager, I'm not an insurance professional, I'm not an attorney, I'm John Bennett, Chief of Staff. But I wanted to, one thing, this is in my portfolio, and I ask a lot of those detailed questions that have come up today, and our risk manager's done a great job. She's done an amazing job with our risk package, if you will. And I just want to make two clarifying points. I think the way the question was phrased and responded to about objectivity was just a little bit off. Not so much on the answer, but on the way the question was posed and then the response. No harm on either side. I think the process to evaluate a claim is objective within the city. I think the subjectivity is both the situation and the threshold of money that we would decide based on our self-insured portion leading up to the $500,000 deductible. In other words, we would have to consult with legal and see, are we going to cross that threshold? Are we going to stay below that threshold in risk? So the subjectivity would apply to the financial risk part, but the objectivity of the coverage would remain on either side of that equation of 500,000. That's the way I see it, and thank you for agreeing with me on that. The second thing is, and the only way I can do this is with my own analogy of a lot of us have home, auto, car, maybe vessel, whatever the case is. Some of us at certain levels of our career or our lifestyle enjoy an umbrella policy. This policy is within a framework of risk. It's a piece of a giant puzzle of insurance. So as to Mr. Miranda, Councilman Miranda's point, if we throttle this, it's affecting an insurance universe for the city of probably at least 16 different policies and billions of dollars of assets. So I would say on one piece of this, the objectivity that Councilman Carlson asked about is there. And I would tell you that in my 30 years here and in being involved in a lot of high-risk incidents in law enforcement and beyond, that almost everything is covered. And to Councilman Vieira's point, there are going to be isolated incidents where somebody has gone out of the scope of their employment, out of the scope of the policy, and they put themselves in their own little risk position. And then the statute allows for recovery should they prevail. So there's a lot of safeguards to working within the city, volunteering within the city, being an elected official in the city. But remember, this policy sits within an entire risk universe that, and as we talk about it, all the risk people out there watch these conversations. So we've really got to be mindful about how we manage our risk profile, risk universe.
But here's Mr. Chair, if I could,
Councilman Carlson.
I don't, as one of the potential insurers, I don't feel that it's subjective at all. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole talking about other cases. But what I would suggest is in between now and May 5th, that you all have individual conversations with each of us. And it's possible that if we spend a half hour that I'll be convinced, but just the case studies that I've observed, I don't feel confident at all. If any, and just as you said, the risk people watch this. Also, the people that would potentially sue us are watching this. Mm-hmm. And if they look at it and say, oh, well, the city is not going to protect city council members or anybody else in the city, then they'll file litigation that could potentially bankrupt any of us. And every single one of us should be afraid of this, unless you've been fully briefed on it. The same thing is if you have an auto policy, if you haven't read it and you don't know what's covered, or a health insurance policy, you should be worried. And I don't think any of us knows enough about the coverage, not above 500,000, but up to 500,000, how the process would be. But if somebody has a claim, do we even know where to go? To my knowledge, I've never been told where to go with a claim. Hopefully I won't have one, but if somebody has a claim in the healthcare policy, there's a standard process. And as I would understand it, it would be handled, the calculation about whether something's covered or not would be by the third-party administrator of the insurance, not by a staff person, especially if the staff person is appointed by a political person. Then it potentially brings politics into the mix, and someone could argue that they were covered or not covered because of political reasons. And so my point is that it could be that the structure is already there, but I think we all need to be briefed, and we need to have some level of confidence. And if there are ways that we can tweak it, I'm not suggesting tweaking the whole thing that will cost us lots of money, but let's just make sure that we're covered.
And thank you, Councilman Carlson. And my objective was not to change the motion, but was just to clarify thought process till we get. And I do appreciate the one-on-one, and our risk manager actually put that in the memo that it would be a good idea to have one-on-one conversations to the exact points that you made. So I appreciate that approach, and we look forward to working with everybody who's interested in that.
Thank you very much.
Back to my analogy again. If you got diagnosed into the health plan and you needed a lung transplant, and someone who was a political appointee got to make the decision about about your life or death situation, you would be scared if you didn't 100% get along with everybody. And so the same thing here, getting sued into oblivion is to some extent a life and death situation. And I think people should feel safe. And I think that, I can't imagine any of my colleagues feel safe right now.
Well, thank you. Again, I'm only aware of how it's been translated through the legal system, and truthfully, I've been here 40 years, I feel safe, but I do think we need to spend time making sure everybody else does.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Councilman
Thank you.
Carlson has a motion, a second from Vieira.
Yes, sir.
And this is for May 5th under staff reports. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then we also have an existing motion about Chapter 119. Is that correct, Mr. Shelby?
Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. That's set for
April 7th?
a discussion. Yes, it's on the April 7th.
And would you like to postpone that and add that, bundle it up?
I'd like it to travel with that.
Okay, so if we could have a motion on the discussion for April 7th regarding Chapter 119, is that correct, sir?
Well, it's actually creating an ordinance to protect elected officials that are sued under Chapter 119 is the way it reads.
Okay, so if we could.
I'll make that motion to move it to travel with the other one to May 5th.
Perfect. Motion from Councilman Carlson, second? Second from Councilman Goose, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Our last item of the day, adding extra meetings.
Having extra.
Yes,
Good.
ma'am, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. Abby Feely, Director of Development and Growth Management for the city. It's a pleasure to be back in chambers before you this afternoon. I did file a memorandum on this item. Item 16 on your agenda was a motion made by Councilman Vieira related to additional council meetings to address the backlog of rezoning and special use cases that are awaiting quasi-judicial hearings. As I just mentioned, I did file a memo on this, and I did file an addendum last night because I had received some feedback related to the potential calendars that I had in the memorandum and options for your consideration this afternoon. As you're aware, Development Coordination has worked over the past 2 years through the pandemic. They've been with you at the convention center. We've done virtual hearings. We've returned in person. We've done whatever we could to continue to keep those hearings moving forward with you. In addition, we went through the consideration of a moratorium, which we also feel may have had an impact in the number of applications that were filed and people anticipating that development may be stifled in some way, and they wanted to get in before that happened. Historically, you have conducted 2 evening hearings a month, and the way that land development, or what is now development coordination, has managed that is to set 10 new items and 3 continued items, so a total of 13 items. Some months, those are modified with comp plan amendments, comprehensive plan amendments. Some months they are, but we've always stuck to those 13 slots, so to speak, twice a month. And over the past 18 months, I've come before you a couple times to discuss with you the backlog. We've come up with using both hearings, using all 13 slots, not just having alcohol on the second night, having a mixture of cases. We've done a series of approaches, and we've come back to you and even talked through, when we've been caught up, let's go back to how it was, and you have been very willing to coordinate with us to try to find the best solutions in moving forward. And again, today, at your request, we're here with some options for how we might address the backlog. Just to talk a little bit about that. So up until I'd say maybe 6 or 8 months ago, we were staying in that 8 to 9 cases a cycle, applications being received by development coordination. We're now at an average of 15 to 17 applications. So right away, we're filling up that first 10 slots in the first hearing of the month, and then we're potentially using 5 to 7 of the slots for the next cycle, which is only really leaving room for 3 more applications to come in and fill that night. But at an average of 15, we're continuing to exceed what's going and what is available to our customers, our clients. So the couple options that I did outline for you in my first memo and in the subsequent, and I do have copies of those calendars if anybody would like to look at them. was consideration of adding 4 additional hearings from now through the end of the year. That would give us 52 additional slots potentially to address the backlog. There was consideration of putting them on a Tuesday, and I did provide 4 dates for that. And then what I provided last night was if you contemplate adding an additional Thursday evening hearing, and if it is either the first Thursday of the month, if you did it the first Thursday of the month, you'd have hearings the first Thursday, the second Thursday, you'd have a break on the third Thursday, and on the fourth Thursday, you would have another evening hearing. If you did it on the third Thursday, you'd have night meetings the second, third, and fourth Thursday of the month. So the other recommendation was to consider adding hearings just for the comprehensive plan amendments and to stop intermingling those with slots that are allocated for the rezonings and special uses. And then we could have fully an additional, nights just dedicated to those cases. So those also in my original memo were proposed on Tuesdays, but I do have some dates for you today if you wanted to consider adding those on Thursdays. And we're suggesting 3 more hearings for those, 1 a quarter for the remainder of the year.
Thank you very much. So I'll start by saying that I'm supportive of whatever. If it's every Thursday, or as I was explained, where we get 1 Thursday off a month, we're overwhelmed with work. I'm also supportive of the comp plan amendments coming in on a potential additional hearing, because that'll free up. Those are generally pretty easy. Usually, sometimes they can get more complicated, but I'm happy with whatever. Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I motioned for this because we hear from a lot of folks in development on the long wait that there is right now and the significant backlog. I'm not a fan of doing this like on its face. I'm an attorney. I'm a father. I'm married. I have hours that I have to bill. This is labeled as a part-time job, and it's not, and that's just the way it is. And public service is a real privilege. But again, I certainly have things to do in my private sector life and whatnot. But I think that this is something that's incumbent upon all of us. Something that I think that we could also do potentially to offset this is after the next commendation-only meeting to set those aside, and so that we have less time for the commendations-only meetings while we're doing, if council agrees, these Thursday evening meetings. I think that's a good way to mitigate the damages, so to speak, on this issue. But that's my thoughts. Yes, sir. To get rid of the commendation days that we have, the extra meetings on Tuesday, not the ones that are already set, of course, because people are relying upon those, but to get rid of the commendation-only days. That'll just offset some of it until these Thursdays are done, just to address concerns of people saying, okay, we're adding more and more meetings, which are very legitimate concerns. I have that concern, but that's just the way it is.
So you're gonna add
Mr. Chair.
You're gonna add those accommodations on a Thursday, you trying to tell me?
I think the last commendation only day is in April, I think. At least it's set.
Okay, I just want to say, because these accommodations, some of these accommodations, we wind up spending almost over an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes with accommodations.
Yes.
And you get bogged down in the agenda on Thursday, and it's over because the agenda is so full. I'm just
Darn
gonna be honest, and I'm gonna be honest, another thing too, if we're gonna add days, and depending on these kind of cases, I mean, it does us no good, especially for me, to sit here till almost 11, 12, 1 o'clock. I mean, we've done good so far, because we cut it down, but to add so many cases and be here, it doesn't help the public. It doesn't help us to make decisions. And I'm not really just, I want to get them done, but I don't want to be adding all these cases, and we're here till late night.
Sure.
I'm not a fan of that.
And if I may, just to clarify, if we were to get rid of the commendation days, we would have to go on a commendation diet for the next 5 months to address those concerns that Councilman Goods very correctly states, which is that we can't spend a lot of time in commendations. So we have to go on a commendation diet as it relates to being within City Council, I would think. So those are my thoughts, and interested in seeing what everybody else thinks. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Shelby and then Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. I just want to bring to council's attention, when we talked about adding the presentation day on Tuesday, it was put out to see, just so it would be on the calendar if it worked, and if it didn't, then you could always take it away, just so you know that, if we take a look at the calendar, it looks like they've already scheduled through next year, frankly, when the presentation to the ATU or the police officer of the month, so those would all just have to be rescheduled, but that's not a problem. But what I think what I was also going to add is the concern with regard to commendations, because depending on how many and depending what they are, just like public comment, it's one of the few things that this council has no control over during a public meeting. And if you have a 5 o'clock start, then we have to be mindful of that.
Thank you very much. Councilman Carlson, Councilman Miranda, then Councilman Citro.
Yeah, as Councilmember Vieira said, this is supposed to be a part-time job. We signed up for a part-time job. The reality is that we work full-time. I have 2 full-time jobs, but almost all day, every day, and sometimes at night, working on the city. When we're not here in person, we're meeting with constituents, and we're listening to constituents, and we're going to meetings on their behalf. So it's not that we just work on Thursdays. We work through the rest of the week. However, I have a legal and moral obligation to my kids on Monday and Tuesday nights, and I cannot go to meetings on Monday and Tuesday nights. So even if it's on a short-term basis, I can't do that. So if you all want to put them on Monday and Tuesday night, that's fine, but I can't attend. I can attend Monday during the day, I can attend Tuesday during the day, Wednesday during the day, Friday during the day, and I can go Wednesday night, Thursday night, probably we would do Friday night. But I'm available all the times except Monday and Tuesday night. And so if we did something, I would want it also to be temporary, that this is a temporary backlog that we need to push through. And I don't think it should go past this year. And then the most important point is that, and I've said this over and over again, the public expects us to meet on Thursdays. And when we don't meet on Thursdays, they think one of 2 things. One is we're providing an imposition to them. In the neighborhood and other activists, they take off all day Thursday sometimes because they want to speak at public comment, or they leave work early on Thursday nights. They complain because they can't come on Tuesday morning, on Tuesday night, on Thursday morning, Thursday night, because it's not that it's an inconvenience for us, it's an inconvenience for them. But more importantly, they think that we're trying to hide something, especially with land use cases. I would caution us from putting them any other days other than Thursdays. Putting accommodations on Tuesdays, I still think is not fair to the people getting the accommodations, because most people aren't watching because it's not on Thursday. But land use cases in particular, I think should be on the day people expect us to meet on. Thank you.
Councilman Miranda, then Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much. I'm next to confess. Let me just say this. In the old days, you had a council meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays. You didn't read my committee from 1 to 18 and pass them all. You had to do one individually, every single one of them. And guess what? It was done. And I'm a young 81. From Thanksgiving to May 7th, I have 3 days off. Christmas, New Year's, and Easter. I'm here Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. I'm at the other place Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I feel great. The more I work, the more I feel better. The better I feel. I know what the job was when I took it. I know, and I've said it before, that we have to set more hearings to facilitate what we have backlogged. The prices of goods and services are going up. The longer we take, the higher it costs. So if I can sacrifice, maybe I'm digging my own grave, but that's what I like to do. So it is what it is. And we have to get rid of this backlog somehow, somewhere, and get this thing done. So it doesn't matter to me if it's Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. We got to get it done for the sake of having the city moving forward. And not about developers' rights to give somebody a day job. No, it's not about that. It's about we have the business of running the city, and this is the business of the city council to do. So we gotta figure out how to do it, or tell the people you don't want any more development at all, period. It's gotta have, something's gotta happen. You're stuck where you're at. You can't get to it. And when you get to it, we can't hear it because we got more than we can handle. You have, and the combination thing did help. In fact, I have 3 that I gotta present that were the wrong dates put off by me or somebody else. But it's something that, as long as the legalization of getting the notices published on time, and we gotta get something done. If we don't, you think prices are gonna come down? They're not. Nothing is gonna come down. Once it goes up, it usually maintains a steady pace until you have what? The falling of the economy. And then everything comes up. You don't have to worry. You're only gonna have 4 or 5 cases a month. And then everybody's gonna say, I wonder when we can get back to 15. It is what it is. The times mandate what we have to do now. Some months are much more than others. And if we get this backlog up, I think maybe in 5 or 6 months, we'll be back to one meeting a month. That's all I'm gonna say. So it makes no difference to me what day you pick. I'm willing to do it.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much. My confession is over.
3 Our Fathers and 4 Hail Marys.
Got it.
Councilman Seacher.
Forgive me, Father, for it. I too have 2 jobs. My employer is the citizens of Tampa. My clients on my other job won't like it, but if I have to, I'll move to Saturday and Sunday for them. Need be, I'll be here 5 days a week. I signed up for this, I got elected for this, my duty is to the citizens. The only question I have for you, Ms. Feely, is when we came back from COVID, we were backlogged. And we said, okay, it's gonna only take 3 or 4 months and we'll catch up. Well, it seems like we haven't caught up, and we're actually deeper in the hole than what we were before COVID, before catching up from COVID. This city is booming. People are coming here wanting to build condos, build apartments, start businesses, start restaurants, whatever. Are we ever going to get to that point where we have caught up and we can go back to 1 day a week? Is there any way that some things could be done administratively that would help compensate? Are there other ways in which we can change our code to help from being here from 9 in the morning till 12 at night, perhaps 2 to 3 days a week? I'm just throwing this out to the universe. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not pointing fingers. But of course, I have a duty. We all have a duty. But are we ever going to catch up?
Abby Feely. So I can tell you, I was here in 06 when we were doing 2 full, nights a month. I was here in 08 when we went to 1 hearing a month, and we were lucky if we had 3 or 4 cases because of the recession. And I've been here till 3 o'clock in the morning with council processing rezonings myself. So when looking at this and working with my team, my second question to them was, okay, part 1 is how do we address the backlog? But part 2 is, if all of these cases are being approved, what are they going there for? What is the reason behind why they are applying? And to me, that's part B that I need to bring back to you, is to do an analysis of what you've been seeing and figure out if there are code changes that could possibly address what it is. If it's 5 of them came to you for local street access waiver and that was all they needed, then yes, we should be changing the code and making those adjustments. The other side to that is it may be pure demand, and we may need to look at that also, and that would be a part B as well. If that is, looking at some other process. We have talked about a zoning hearing master in the past. We have talked about other things where that first level of review is being handled by a different entity besides city council. And So there have been other options. I don't know that I can fully answer that question for you today, and I've always promised that I'd be straightforward with you, and that's where I am today. Today, I'm trying to answer the question of my clients, which is the applicants, which is the citizens, which is the city, and continuing to move us forward in a direction to address the housing crisis, to address getting additional development in an intentional and meaningful and predictable way. And I had many people reach out to me in preparation for this afternoon. Many reached out to you. I have a young plastic surgeon and that reached out to me that said, I bought this piece of property. I want to build my own medical office. I, scoped out and put together a pro forma and a timeline and and I came and filed with you by that timeline, and now I won't be heard till the end of the year. Can you help me? And, that's our first response is, how can we help? We're here to help. What can we do? So we are there with you. I try to be mindful of CTTV, of the clerk's office, of the legal department, of the planning commission, because coming to you and asking for another night means we're all coming to you for another night. It's not just, gonna show up there without the legwork and the background going into it. And that means more for us too. And with Ryan leaving, I've even said, if it's Eric or I who are bringing cases to you, we're gonna make sure they're properly done and they're thoroughly done, and we're providing quality service as we continue to work through this together.
Thank you.
Sir, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So, I know that some council members have talked about date conflicts. Councilman Carlson talked about family issues. I don't know how council feels. I think that maybe we can, support having the 4 meetings, and maybe, because instead of us getting all of our calendars out today, in the next 7 days, we all get together with our staff, et cetera, find days it's amenable and bring it back next week. Is that?
I think, yeah, that's a good idea. We look at this calendar that we have, we take the week to think about it, and then next Thursday is a regular meeting, and we can bring it up under staff reports, last item. Would you like to make a motion that?
Sir, yes, if I may, I make the motion that this returns to us next week for finalized approval of calendaring for the 4 days, and that council members be directed to get that straightened out.
We have a motion from Councilman Vieira.
Second.
Do we have a second? Second from Councilman Citro. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
May
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just say one last thing? With the anticipation that we would like to add in June and the 30-day notice requirement and figuring out what cases those are, I'll be here next week with you to ensure that we can get those dates secured and we can start moving forward.
Perfect.
Appreciate your
Mr.
consideration.
Chair,
Yes, sir. Councilman Carlson.
Ms. Feely, if I could just throw out one idea. I hear buzz about the timeline of people having to schedule far out, but by far the biggest complaints I get are about permitting and the development staff. One, and I talked to Nicole about this last week, and I talked to the mayor about it, and also Carol Post. I know Carol's working on it, Nicole's working on it, but we had some of the biggest names in Tampa call me pulling their hair out saying, what can we do? And they, one had this is a few years ago, but one had a toilet where they told them to put the handle on the right side and then put it on the left side and then on the right. And so they complain that different inspectors come out and they won't approve things, that site plans take forever to approve. So by far the most complaints, I get 2 or 3 complaints from very powerful people a week, that it's the process before it's put on our agenda that is taking so much time, and that it's frustrating for them. And then when they get past that process and they're already frustrated, it's taken months, then they say, well, now I have to wait another 6 months to put it on the city council agenda. So I know you are working on this, but how can we use the same word again, provide more objectivity and speed to getting that process through quicker?
Councilman Carlson, I appreciate your question. I spent almost an hour this morning on the phone with our chief building official related to this. I think sometimes this is part of our own issue of trying to be accommodating and taking in permits that are insufficient. that are missing parts to them. So they get their first round of review and they didn't have an electrical plan, they didn't have a life safety plan, they didn't meet the minimum requirements for that first review of the permit to even get started. But we do our best to provide that customer service and give that first review. Then when they come in for a second review and they finally have all the pieces and we get to conduct the thorough review, that's when they end up with 16, 18 review questions. So we were actually vacillating on this morning, and is it on us then to draw a stronger line as to what is accepted in the door if it's not sufficient in order to keep things moving, and that's how they end up with 4 reviews or 5 reviews. I mean, trust me, I am often the front line when those complaints are coming in the door, and oftentimes there is another side to that story, and people are using private providers, and we get a 20-story condo tower that comes in under a private provider, but there was no life safety plan with the permit. So our responsibility is to ensure that these buildings are constructed safely, they're constructed to code, and we are not going to approve something that is not the way that it needs to be. I mean, when Surfside happened, our department, the first calls and questions came into us. What are you doing to ensure we're safe? And what we are doing to ensure that you're safe is that a GC is actually building what is on the plans and has been approved. If the GC has not constructed what is on your permit plan, guess what? Either the construction needs to be demolished and reconstructed consistent with the plans, or the plans need to be changed to match what is out there. This is not only a protection for the business owner, this is a protection for homeowners. They're buying these homes. Work and renovation is being done, and if it is not being done to code, then once they are gone, the homeowner is left holding the bag on that, and that's not fair, and that's not the right way to do business. So it might be taking a little bit more time, and it might be a bit problematic, but darn it, it's going to be right. And I think that is what is most important in moving this forward, to ensure that what is out there is safe, it's sustainable, and it's meeting the Florida Building Code. So trust me, when those calls come in, I'm the first one trying to figure out, why is this taking so long? What are we doing? How can we do it better? How can we fix it? And a lot of times the story that's being told is either not the whole story, and it's not fully our responsibility. This is a partnership to get these things done, but we are out there looking, and we have a great team that continues to ensure that what is going on is done correctly. Now, like I said, if we need to hold that entry line a little harder, where if you are not meeting sufficiency for a review, we are not taking it in, and that way you're not getting the first set of comments back that says you need an electrical plan, you need a Florida, building product approved list, you need this, you need that. We just we'll make sure those things are in before it comes in the door, and that way you're not in the door and it's our problem. We're waiting to get you in the door till everything is accurate and right.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda.
That should be beneficial, but also on the point I've seen lately, more and more and more of those that are coming in, either they were not prepared when they started, you got the list going in so they can get into rotation to be heard before the council, and guess what happens? They ask for a continuation. Sometimes you got 12 and 13 of them, and 5 or 6 of them want continuation. In my book, if that's what they want, that means that they had that amount of time and they didn't do the due diligence. They didn't meet with all the neighbors, or the ones that they're supposed to meet with, the neighborhood association, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then they want a continuation. In my book, they go last. Not for the next month, not for the following month, but you had 1 bite at the apple, not 5 bites at the apple. That way, the backlog becomes much smaller, and what Ms. Feely is saying is, don't take the application in until it's completely done, exactly what the code calls for. If not, you put them in, and guess what? Backlog, they come here, they want a continuation. It could happen that way.
Well,
I'm not saying it is, but it could.
I believe, Abby Feely, I believe, Councilman Miranda, you're correct. People can file on a SELA, and they can get a case number, and they think, I'm in the system, I'm in the next rotation, I'm on for that agenda. If you are not sufficient, you are not on for that agenda, and you are going to get moved out.
If somehow we could fix that, Roxella or Ida, her cousin, or whatever it is, that you get these things in, and when you hit for it, that comes into, if it doesn't meet the requirements of the following things, it's not taken in, it's given back within a couple of days' time, so that they can fix it, because it's getting cumbersome, because the process is flawed. Not because of you, it's a system that's working on it, that they want a date because they know they've got a lot of competition, but they're not prepared to send it in. They send it in to get a date, and now when they come here, they're not prepared, so guess what? I want a next meeting, or the following, make it 2 years from now, see how it changes right quickly. That's it, Mr.
Thank you
Chairman.
very much. I see Nicole Travis has her hand up, and then Councilman Goode, Councilman Citro. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you very much, and thank you, Abby, for making the presentation and making the case and going through really the details and the nuances of code requirements. And our first goal is public safety. That is our number one goal. But Councilman Carlson, to your point, you were there's a couple of issues going on here. You have your land use and zoning hearing, you have permit and site plan review, and then you also have inspections. And Councilman Carlson, you were talking about inspections. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to improve on the process side. Like Ms. Feely said, holding the line when applications are not complete is one. And I think that's something that we're both dedicated to working on. But there's also the planned review and inspection piece, and I will take accountability for some of that. You get one bite of the apple. Developers need predictability. So, which is why we're here before you, trying to get new additional council meeting days. But this is also on the permitting side, Councilman Carlson. You get one bite of the apple. We don't get to send inspectors out, give you 10 comments, and then once they fix those, they come back and you get another 5. That's something that we need to take ownership for instead of dragging out. So there's a lot of things from the land use piece and zoning piece, all the way until you get to the built construction. Public safety is our number one priority, but there are things that we can do as well to be more transparent, accountable, and do thorough reviews. And Ms. Feely and I have been working on some details on how we can do a better job of thorough reviews so that we could get comments, sufficient comments back for the information that's provided. One thing I want you to remember is the comments that we provide, we're responsible for giving you comments for what has been provided to us. If your drawings lack detail, you'll get a lack of detail in your response. But same is true as you go to the inspection and the built form. On the inspector side, if you're inspecting it, you should have all your comments provided on the first inspection, not adding on additional comments at the end. So Councilman Carlson, your point that you were making, I think was on the built environment side, and there's an opportunity for us to continue to improve that, and we are committed to the entire process. So thank you, Council.
Thank you. Councilman Goode, Councilman Citro.
I'm glad for those 2 points, because, you know, you get one inspector that says it's 48 inches. The other one says, you know, it should have been 42, you know, so the consistency has to be there. But what I also see as well in the last case we had, I sent over, is that you're right. Some of these GCs, they should know what the codes are. You know, and then they bring it, and then the applicant's upset, thinking it's us, but actually it's your GC, and didn't do his job. So I think, you know, some of those things can be addressed, and I'm glad you guys are noticing that it can address a couple of those points.
Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda, I couldn't agree with you more. The petitioners, when they come into this room, they should be ready for an up or down vote. If we have to explain, or what I really don't like is redesigning the project from the dais, that does nobody any good. So petitioners should come in here expecting an up or down vote. Now, just because they get a no vote doesn't mean they have to make 1 year. If there are substantial changes to their plans, they can come in before that. Correct, Ms. Feely?
If Abby Feely, Director of Development and Growth Management, if a application is denied and they wish to resubmit, if they have addressed those issues under
Correct.
which the denial was made, then they can get a determination from the zoning administrator that they are substantially different and they may proceed prior to the 12 months.
Thank
Yes.
you for articulating my point so well. So we should, it is my opinion, that we should stop redesigning from the dais. Petitioners should expect an up or down vote and know the consequences because they have already heard from us on the reasons why we don't like it or don't want to pass it. So, Councilman Miranda, you are correct. Thank you, Mr. Feely. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Mitch Perry, we have reached the end of the agenda. We've been waiting patiently there. All right, we'll go to new business and information reports. Mr. Shelby, is there anything, sir?
Yes, I do have something, but I'd like to hold it until Councilmember Vieira comes back. He's coming back.
Councilman Goods, do you have anything, sir? Councilman Citro?
Well, no, nothing to that.
Councilman Miranda?
I have three, just the ones at the wrong dates, and I'm just going to mention the name of the person, and we're going to change it. It came out Thursday, April 7th. It should be Tuesday, April 12th for Mr. Bakari. That's one of them. And the second one to Ryan Manassi, it should be not April the 7th, but April 12th. And for the Moffett Minority Cancer Awareness Month, it should not be April 7th. It should be April 12th, 2022. And I'm giving it back to the clerk
Motion
because the wrong dates
to
are gonna
correct
come out.
that. Second from Councilmember Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Councilman Carlson, do you have anything, sir?
Yes, if I could, remember when Morris Massey was there earlier, we talked about the CCNA process, and my wording on this might not be perfect, but I would just like him to come back with his ideas on how to put some guardrails around that process. So just to, if we're going to go, for example, from a $6 million contract, or it sounds like today a $1 million contract to a $108 million contract, there should be more steps in between. And it sounds like he and the administration are in favor of doing something like that. So I would, and I don't have a date, but I would move to ask the city attorney's office to report back to council on whatever date as to ways we can put limits on the CCNA process to provide more transparency and competitive bids, especially on expanding budgets above a certain limit.
Second.
Do you want to do that for May 19th? It gives them more than 30 days or so.
That would be great for me.
Yeah, because May 5th is getting pretty busy, so we have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Vieira.
Yes, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anything else?
And
That's
that
it,
is,
thank you.
if I can, just for clarification, Councilmember Carlson, that's to come back with recommendations that's preliminary, or not to come back with finished product. That's what I'm asking. Just for
Yeah, and I'll send the language to the clerk.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Shelby, everyone's back, so do you have anything?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to the position of Chair Pro Tem, that's really not really spelled out in your rules of procedure. And as you know, right now, that position is vacant. So I'm wondering whether the council wants to make a motion, just for future reference, that if you are not here, who would act as Chair Pro Tem?
It would go to Vieira because he's the predecessor, the previous chair before me, because we have the elections May 5th. So.
That's correct. And so that's the clear understanding. I just wanted the public to be aware of that you do have somebody who would be acting as the Chair Pro Tem.
And CRA is not affected because it's separate.
And I'll say that unless if anybody, I have no preference on these things unless if somebody else here wants it. If so, speak now, because
If you need it, I'll make a motion to make Ms. Riera the temporary chair pro tem.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson nominating Councilman Vieira as Chair Pro Tem, second from Councilmember Goods. All in favor?
And that is only till the end of the term.
Until May 5th.
Until May 5th. Thank you very much.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Would you like to say a few words? I'm kidding. Then I hand you the gavel. I have one motion.
Yes, sir.
On January 27, 2022, a motion was made by Councilmember Dingfelder and seconded by myself. The motion read as follows: that staff in the legal department be requested to report back and discuss the possibility of amending the code or city rules that would not allow a petitioner or his/her representative to proffer any testimony or evidence of matters that can't be enforced. Further, that said report be brought back on April 7th under staff reports and new business. I've determined there's no need to proceed with this matter at this time, and I therefore like to make a motion to remove this item from the April 7th, 2022 agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Motion to receive and file?
So move.
So, motion from Councilman Miranda. Do we have a second? Second from Councilman Goods. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.